And now we go to function. So let's move right into function. And when it's time to deal with function, first, yes, it's nice to have some models mounted in a fully seated collar position. And once you have those models, the first thing you do is you start with the centrals, just like we did with the photographs. And I know you know this, but I want to review how I went over all this case with Shannon. So I added about that 1/2 millimeter with one central, and then I added it to the other centrals. And then I thought to myself, but what I could do is I could add edges and lip support. So I went ahead and I added a little bit of wax on the facial. Now, what's another, because basically I'm moving her teeth forward, right? I'm putting the edges where they belong in her head, but I'm sort of pushing her teeth forward. And what's another way we could do that? Orthodontically. And what you could have done is you could have cut the teeth out and slightly moved them forward. And the neat thing is it would work because you would have taken them out and moved them forward and you've said, holy moly, that's a lot more space. She already has space. And you would have said, so pretty much that's not going to work. And right now you're already starting to see how if you trust the process of EFSB, your answers or the compromises get answered for you. So because I sort of thought that would be the case, I just said, well, if I move them forward, the spaces are going to get bigger. So I'm going to go ahead and try and support her upper lip. So I put the edges where they belong on her teeth and then just added a little bit of facial support to help support her upper lip. So I did that. And then I finished that with the front 6. So I've created what I saw in my photo with a little extra support for her lip because I also saw that in my photos. Now I moved to the lower. And again, we picked that space. And we said, okay, it was sort of going to be, we're going to add that little bit to the centrals. And I added the cuspids in through there. And I trusted that process and I put them there. And now I close the articulator and I work out the guidance, right? I've got all my guiding teeth, my front 6 and my bottom 6 where they belong, and I move in protrusive and excursive movements. And so I move into protrusive from fully seated collar position into protrusive, and I make sure it's nice and smooth, that all those edges are working nicely together. And then when I go to cuspid rise, so we start with the teeth together and moving to cuspid rise to one side and all the way to crossover. And then I move to the other side, cuspid rise and crossover. And yeah, this is the neat thing is I found that, yes, those cuspids I plopped on there were a little too pointy. This is why you do it. You put teeth on there and then you make them work nice and smooth. And so what we have now is we have the top and bottom front teeth, her guiding teeth, in the right place in her face, in her head. And I've got them working together as smooth as possible. Her guiders are guiding smoothly. That's the beginning of function. And now what we want to do is we want to just close the articulator. When we close the articulator, this is your vertical dimension of occlusion. That's what I'm going to say for you today. I'm not going to go deep into how to always determine VDO, but one way to do it that works on a fairly regular basis is you put the top teeth and the bottom teeth, front teeth where they belong in the head, you close the articulator. If the back teeth touch, nice, you're there. If the back teeth don't, maybe you should do something about it. And so this is her vertical dimension of occlusion. Now, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to say, this is when you're somewhat class 1-ish, I will say. In other words, if you're way class 2 with a huge overjet and you close the articulator, well, the front teeth aren't going to be touching at all. And in fact, you can see that Shannon is slightly class 2-ish, and so her incisal edges barely touch, her lower incisal edges barely touch the gingival aspect of the lingual of her upper teeth. So, but that is her vertical dimension of occlusion. So trust this process when you're at least class 1-ish. You have to get them to touch. But that is the beauty of EFSB, is it helps you determine these things. So there you go. We've got her vertical dimension set. And now I go ahead and I do what's called planning my stops. I just take a close look and I say, what teeth are close to where they belong to start with? And I make some marks so I can remember buccal cusps that are close or receiving areas that are close, because I want cusp tips to flat landing areas, whether it be marginal ridges or fossas and what have you. So I do what's called planning my stops so that I have an idea as to what's close to begin with. And then I start making teeth look like teeth. And I started on the top teeth because you might remember they all looked flat. And because we always start with the top arch, I put some cusp tips on those mesiolingual cusps, those major functional cusps. And as you can see from the photos I took on the lingual of the cast, they're still not touching the central fossas on the bottom. But I put the teeth there because they look like teeth. I put some cusps in there and I said, okay, they're still not touching. Well, let's move down to the bottom here. And those teeth are flat too. So I'm going to take those buccal cusps, those functional cusps, and create some cusp tips. Because remember, teeth that look like teeth function like teeth. Form follows function. So I put some cusps on these teeth and on the buccal cusps of the lower teeth. And as I continue to do that, what you can see is they actually did touch those nice receiving areas on the top teeth. So I've got marginal ridges or flat spots. But yet those upper lingual cusps still aren't touching the fossas on the bottom. That's okay, because I can come in and I can add some wax in the fossas because those teeth didn't look like teeth anyway. So now I have my front teeth guiding nice and smoothly, and I have all my back teeth touching evenly and simultaneously, functional cusps to nice flat receiving areas. I got them all, right? And have I truly visualized the end right here? This is a blueprint of where I want to go. Except that I always do something wrong in every case. And in this case, I forgot to come in. I did two things. I forgot to go in and put those laterals in on the bottom because I just sort of wanted the cuspids and centrals there to start. So I plopped those in and then made sure it was still smooth. And of course it was. And then I added that facial of the veneer on that premolar that we noticed on the photo because I did the front six and I forgot to add that seventh tooth over there on her right-hand side. So now I have truly visualized the end. This is a blueprint of where we want to go, right? Except it's ugly. But I want you to remember something. Yep, it's ugly right now, but what did we just do? We have created on an articulator what was in her mouth and felt on plastic. It might be ugly on wax right now, but it's exactly the same situation we created in her mouth. That's a phenomenal starting place for function.